Shenzhen. A brand new tech park glows under blue LED lights. Inside, China's largest AI cluster, built by Huawei, is running non-stop 24/7. Technicians have a nickname for it, the starving monster. It burns over 500 kilowatts of power every day. In return, glitches, misinformation, and life-or-death decisions gone wrong in hospital systems. On state TV, it's praised as China's leap ahead of the West. But behind the curtain, engineers spend their nights patching bugs on a platform barely anyone uses. Just 2% of AI developers worldwide use Huawei's software. Nvidia, 85. The cost? 60 million yuan, nearly $9 million US, for a machine even the Chinese military won't rely on. So what is this really? A miracle of self-reliance or a high-voltage illusion powered by chips from Taiwan, memory from South Korea, and lies from Beijing? At first glance, Huawei's CloudMatrix 384 looks like a technological breakthrough. A towering server cluster with 384 chips, designed to power China's leap into AI independence. State media rolled out the headlines, "China beats the West. No more relying on foreign tech." But step closer, and you'll hear the hum. Not of progress, but of something burning. This cluster consumes 559 kilowatts of electricity per cycle. That's nearly 4 times more than Nvidia's equivalent system, the GB200 NVL72. The energy bills? Off the charts. A single data center running this machine racks up hundreds of thousands of yuan in power costs. Daily. The Chinese call this a breakthrough. The engineers call it a black hole. And what do you get for all that power? Not much. Compared to Nvidia, Huawei's performance per watt is shockingly low. Same tasks, same datasets, yet Nvidia's system is twice as fast and 10 times more efficient. In hospitals where Huawei's chips were rolled out for AI-assisted diagnosis, the results were chilling. A 2024 report showed error rates jumped by 20%, leading to misdiagnoses, delays, and unnecessary treatments. Patients paid the price, but the state never aired those numbers. Still, the government pushed forward. 60 million yuan per unit. Multiply that by dozens of provinces. Local officials fought for pilot projects, not because the tech worked, but because the propaganda machine demanded it. There's a saying in China, if the emperor believes he's wearing clothes, no one dares say he's naked. CloudMatrix 384 became just that, the emperor's new chip. Huawei didn't develop these chips entirely in-house. The Ascend 910C at the heart of the cluster, manufactured by TSMC, Taiwan's chip giant, through third parties. The memory modules, mostly imported from Samsung, routed through Korea. On paper, it's made in China. In reality, it's assembled in China from foreign parts. A patchwork of tech glued together to dodge US export bans. Even the software is a mess. Developers report having to hire 3 to 5 times more engineers to operate Huawei's platform compared to Nvidia's CUDA. They're not innovating, they're firefighting. And yet, the headlines remain. State outlets still boast that Huawei has caught up. The truth? Even Huawei's domestic customers are pulling back. Because the real product isn't the chip. It's the story. A story about strength, independence, self-reliance. But inside those glowing towers, it's just fans spinning over overpriced hardware. Running code nobody trusts. The deeper you go into the CloudMatrix system, the more absurd it becomes. Because it's not just about poor performance or soaring power bills. It's about a government deliberately wrapping failure in the flag. In January 2025, Chinese state television ran a full hour-long documentary on Huawei's breakthrough. Dramatic music, fast cuts, engineers giving thumbs up to circuit boards. The narrator called it a triumph of national will. What they didn't say, 80% of China's chip-making tools and materials are still imported. That national will is built on foreign tech held together by political pressure. To outsiders, this might sound like a failed business experiment. To people inside China, it's much worse. Because this isn't just one flawed machine, it's a systemic delusion. Beijing has spent over 1 trillion yuan on domestic chip projects in the past decade. Entire tech parks have been built from scratch. Concrete, glass, launch events. But as of early 2025, many of those parks sit empty. One in Hunan province still has construction scaffolding up, 2 years after the ribbon cutting. Another in Sichuan burned through its entire budget before securing a single contract. And yet, Huawei's AI cluster was pushed into production anyway. Why? Because China needed to show the world it was fighting back against US sanctions. It wasn't about building a better chip. It was about building a better narrative. This obsession with saving face leads to a strange phenomenon: forced adoption. Hospitals, universities, even police departments are quietly told to by Chinese. Never mind if the systems don't work. Never mind if they cost 3 times as much. It's not about function. It's about loyalty. One software engineer described the experience like this: "We're not building tools. We're building illusions. Everyone knows the system breaks. But if you say it out loud, your project funding disappears." Worse, the illusion has begun leaking into critical systems. Reports from data centers in Beijing suggest that up to 30% of Huawei's AI servers have idle time exceeding 70%. They sit there, plugged in, turned on, but doing nothing, because the software is unstable, because the hardware overheats, because the clients don't actually use them, but nobody dares shut them down. Too much money has been spent. Too many headlines have been printed. So the servers keep running, humming away in empty rooms, guarded by men in uniforms, because cameras might show up at any time. This is how China defines technological independence: a machine built from foreign parts, running bloated software no one understands, powered by electricity nobody can afford, but promoted by a government that needs to prove something no matter the cost. And the cost keeps rising. In a co-working space outside Hangzhou, a startup founder sits in front of a screen showing lines of broken code. His team once dreamed of building China's next ChatGPT. Now they spend most days debugging a Huawei platform they never wanted in the first place. "We didn't choose this system," he says. "It chose us." In 2024, his startup received a government-backed grant tied to indigenous innovation. The catch? All infrastructure had to be domestically sourced. No Amazon Web Services, no Google Cloud, no Nvidia GPUs, only Huawei Cloud, only CloudMatrix. So they complied. They ported their models to Ascend chips. They spent months rebuilding every tool from scratch. And then they watched the whole system stall. What used to take 10 minutes on Nvidia now took 90 on Huawei. The costs? Triple. The performance? Half. The morale? Gone. But the contract locked them in for 2 years. And the funding only came if they showed patriotic alignment. So they stayed. This is not an isolated case. Across China, hundreds of AI and data startups have been quietly trapped in similar deals. They trade flexibility for subsidies, freedom for survival. In theory, this is about building national resilience. In practice, it's about manufacturing compliance, and the cost is piling up. Let's break it down. Each CloudMatrix 384 unit costs around 60 million yuan, or $8.2 million USD. On top of that, data centers must invest in upgraded cooling systems, reinforced power lines, and Huawei-specific developer environments. The total bill often exceeds 100 million yuan per deployment. That's over 13 million US dollars. For hardware that still depends on chips from Taiwan and memory from South Korea. Now imagine you're a mid-sized tech company in Guangzhou. You get a government directive: upgrade to domestic infrastructure. You take out loans. You move your stack to Huawei. 6 months later, your engineers can't meet deadlines. Your clients start asking questions. Your burn rate spikes, but your subsidy hasn't arrived because you didn't submit the right ideological compliance form. So your payroll stalls. You miss one round of investment, then another. By the end of the year, your company's gone, and no one reports it because it wasn't a tech failure. It was a political misalignment. This is the quiet culling happening in China's private tech sector. Companies that don't fall in line with the government's narrative get shut out. Funding denied, contracts revoked, licenses suspended. The survivors? They're not the best. They're the most obedient. Meanwhile, data from the China Semiconductor Industry Association shows that despite state investment of over 1 trillion yuan, China's chip self-sufficiency rate remains stuck at 15%. The rest still comes from abroad. And yet, Huawei's marketing team keeps rolling out posters. Our chip, our future. In fine print, components sourced through trusted partners. That's the new euphemism for foreign suppliers. Worse, China's push for chip nationalism has started to distort global supply chains. Exporters in Taiwan, Korea, and even Japan report massive orders under false company names, clearly meant to circumvent US restrictions. Some get flagged, some don't, but all of it drives up costs. Even when Chinese firms get the parts, they're stuck assembling patchwork solutions, systems that weren't designed to work together. Inside those systems, waste, lag, fragility, and still, they build more. In Yunnan, a new AI hub is under construction, funded by local bonds and backed by Huawei. Projected cost, 3 billion yuan. Projected use, unknown. The site plan shows rows of server rooms but no tenants yet. Just empty shells, like so many others before it. This is not a tech strategy. It's a real estate investment disguised as innovation. A theater built to look like a future that isn't coming. And the companies caught inside? They're not scaling. They're suffocating. Because in China today, the AI race isn't about building faster models or better platforms. It's about saying the right things, using the right brand, and making sure your failure looks like success until the lights go out. Would you like me to proceed with part 3.2? The worker layer? 750 words? In a rented apartment outside Shanghai's Zhangjiang High-Tech Park, a software engineer works her third overnight shift this week. Her job? Maintaining the back end for a Huawei-based AI cluster her company was forced to adopt. The platform constantly crashes. The documentation is outdated. The tools lack community support. Most nights, she doesn't write new code. She fixes what wasn't supposed to break. She used to work with Nvidia's CUDA system, familiar, streamlined, and efficient. Now she fights with an ecosystem that requires 3 times more effort to do half as much. We're paid to pretend this works, she says quietly. But it doesn't. Her story isn't rare. Across China, tens of thousands of developers, machine learning engineers, and system architects are being redirected into what one Weibo user called a patriotic tech treadmill. You don't build what works. You build what looks right. And when it fails, you work harder, not smarter. This is the human cost of political engineering. Behind every CloudMatrix unit are people, exhausted, underpaid, and afraid to speak. Afraid not just of failure, but of saying the wrong thing in the wrong room. Don't criticize the chip, one manager warned. You never know who's listening. On the outside, the brochures say innovation. On the inside, it's a silent arms race of survival. Engineers trying to make broken systems appear stable just long enough to clear audits or finish demos. In 2024, a mid-level systems analyst from Hangzhou collapsed from exhaustion. She had worked 27 days straight, patching Huawei's Ascend software to integrate with a logistics platform built for Nvidia. When the project failed, the company blamed her poor optimization. She was let go. No one talked about the hardware, or the mandate to go 100% domestic. This culture of fear has reshaped the tech workforce. New graduates are told to serve the nation's innovation goals. But what they walk into is a maze of government directives, failing infrastructure, and shrinking freedom. If you question the inefficiencies, you're labeled anti-China. If you ask to use foreign tools, your team gets audited. As one developer put it, it's not about whether the code runs. It's about whether the ideology checks out. In 2023, over 30% of graduates in China's AI field shifted to non-core roles, tech support, QA testing, localization, because they couldn't build real systems under current constraints. In forums like Jihu, they whisper about leaving. Canada, Singapore, even Vietnam. anywhere that lets them work on real problems with real tools. But many can't leave. Their hukou ties them to cities. Their debts tie them to jobs. Their silence ties them to survival. Meanwhile, Huawei recruiters keep posting slogans. Your code, our future. But in the offices, the screens flicker, the software freezes, and the developers stay late, not because they want to, but because no one dares admit the system doesn't work. This isn't just burnout, it's disillusionment. A generation of Chinese engineers was told they would build the future. Instead, they've become maintainers of a propaganda project with no exit plan. And when they look up from their screens, they see empty cubicles. Former colleagues who burned out, quit, or were let go after one missed deadline. The turnover is silent. The despair is quiet. But it spreads. Inside canteens and commuter buses, they talk in code. Black chip means imported. Red cluster means Huawei-based. Blue screen means meltdown. Everyone understands. No one says it directly. That's the rule now. Speak in silence. Code in fear. Pretend in public. It's a strange kind of work. You build the future, knowing it will never arrive. Because in today's China, technology isn't measured by speed or precision or global benchmarks. It's measured by obedience to the narrative. And that's the only system that never crashes. On the evening news, the anchor smiles. China's domestic AI breakthroughs are accelerating, she says. Behind her, looping footage of Huawei engineers standing proudly next to glowing servers. But just a few miles from the studio, a power substation is running at emergency load. A local data center filed a request to double its electricity allocation, just to keep its Huawei cluster online. The response: please stagger usage. Down the street, a hospital's AI imaging system fails to process scans for 17 minutes. The technician shrugs. It happens. But the patient, a 62-year-old man with chest pain, can't wait. No one reports the delay. No one logs the malfunction. It's not the story they're supposed to tell. Because in today's China, technology has become theater. And society has become the stage crew. The illusion must be preserved. In 2024, a state-run think tank released a white paper calling AI the soul of national rejuvenation. Huawei's CloudMatrix cluster was labeled core to economic sovereignty. Party officials repeated the message: foreign blockades cannot stop our progress. Even as factories quietly failed to meet output goals. Even as cloud service clients defaulted on Huawei contracts, citing instability and hidden costs. None of that made the headlines. Instead, universities held patriotic coding competitions. Billboards in third-tier cities promoted slogans like support domestic tech, build the Chinese dream. In schools, students were taught how China had leapfrogged the US in AI. In practice, few people believed it. But belief wasn't the point. Repetition was. In 2025, Baidu searches for CloudMatrix overheating dropped to near zero. Not because the issue disappeared, but because the term was banned. Weibo accounts that mentioned chip inefficiency were quietly frozen. In forums like Zhihu, entire threads disappeared overnight. Even private chat groups began using code Matrix 3.9 to refer to the system's 3.9x power cost. G9 for government-imposed tech. The censorship was subtle but total. At the same time, the costs reached everyday life. To fund chip infrastructure, some provinces diverted budgets from public health and housing. In Guangdong, several low-income housing projects were quietly paused. In Chengdu, a public library closed early, its building reallocated as a Huawei AI demo zone. Citizens noticed, but no one complained out loud. Not when state media kept repeating, investing in national security is investing in your future. A young man in Nanjing put it this way: we were told we're building the next generation of tech, but it feels like we're just paying for someone else's press release. He had applied to dozens of tech roles in AI. All required Huawei certification. None disclosed salary ranges. Most had contracts tied to local government incentives. He declined all offers. I want to build things, he said. not justify things. This quiet dissatisfaction is growing. In 2024, a nationwide survey on tech worker sentiment was abruptly pulled offline. Leaked screenshots showed that over 60% of respondents felt that politics interfered with productivity. Another 40% reported experiencing burnout due to misaligned tech infrastructure. The official report said, Chinese tech workers are optimistic, patriotic, and determined to overcome all challenges. No data attached. Meanwhile, the actual AI market is slipping. China's share of the global AI chip market remains below 10%, despite massive investment. Local companies complain they're priced out of their own infrastructure. Foreign clients refuse Huawei-built platforms, citing security concerns. And at home, the average consumer remains untouched by the so-called revolution. No one has seen a product that makes life easier. No app feels faster. No service runs smoother. Instead, the message itself is the product. The government doesn't need CloudMatrix to transform society. It only needs it to be believed. Because as long as the narrative holds, China's rising, China's winning, then the system remains stable. Even if the servers overheat, even if the code doesn't run, even if the people know better, the illusion is not for them. It's for the world. And for the mirror, 60 million yuan, 3.9 times the electricity, 5 times the engineers, and one big story to keep it all running. Huawei's AI cluster was supposed to be a symbol of strength, of defiance, of national pride. But inside the blinking lights and polished server rooms, there's only exhaustion, patchwork hardware, broken software, and silence. The government says it's a breakthrough. The developers call it a burden. And the people, they're just paying the bill on the meter in their taxes and in the fading promise of a tech-driven future. If the product doesn't work, if the data isn't real, and if no one's allowed to speak up, what exactly are they building? A technology platform or a perfectly engineered illusion?